you. Acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf joins us from Washington, D.C. now. Mr. Secretary, good morning. Thanks for being with us. You heard Paula Reed say this order is not legally binding. Federal funding is in no way tied to these reforms. How will they be enforced?
Well, I think that criticism falls fairly flat. I think the president's shown and has demonstrated leadership on this initiative. It's a tough issue, but it's one that, again, through the executive order, there's a number of things in there that pushes this issue forward. And as you indicated at the top of your segment, the president said yesterday he's willing to work with Congress, Tim Scott and others in the Senate and the House to continue these reforms. If Congress wants to put additional measures in there, the president and the administration is certainly open to that.
The order is being criticized as not addressing racial bias in policing. You have said you don't believe there is systemic racism, but do you believe there's a systemic problem in the police departments in this country with regard to race?
I think what the executive order lays out is a number of fundamental issues that the president is pushing forward. One is on best practices, making sure that use of force, de-escalation is thought about, is accredited by institutions that are there. We talk about that information sharing, making sure that as police officers move from one jurisdiction or one police station to another, that if there's something in their background, that is addressed before they're hired somewhere else. And then that relationship between law enforcement and social workers as police across the country respond to incidents regarding mental health issues, homelessness, drug addiction, making sure that they have the right individuals partnered with them. So I think there's a number of things in this executive order that really address some of the issues that have been at play over the last several weeks and several years. And we talked about it. The president talked about it yesterday. Other administrations really didn't push the envelope here, didn't address some of these critical issues. And again, we'll work with Congress, we'll work with others to, again, push this ball forward.
But what I'm asking, Mr. Secretary, is, I mean, statistics show that black people are more likely to be shot than white people by police officers. Is there an attempt, a broad attempt in this administration to address the issue of potential racial bias within police departments?
Absolutely. Again, I think the president's been talking about this for some time. I think what we have to realize understand is look at the law enforcement community as a whole. And by and far, these individuals that put on the badge every day and the uniform every day are good people that do the right thing, that don't abuse their power. There is a small minority that do that. We need to address that. President's talked about that. I've talked about that. I believe AG Barr has talked about that. So we are looking at that. But this notion that there's systemic racism in our law enforcement community, I dismiss that. I don't believe that's the case. That says that we have installed and designed a system that installs racist beliefs throughout our law enforcement community. That's just not true. What we need to do is we need to hold those that abuse their power. We need to hold them accountable, and we need to address that. We need to make sure that there are consequences to that, and I think that sends the right signal.
So then how do you address, though, what happened to George Floyd? How do you address the series of videos that we've seen over the past couple of years and actually beyond that, Mr. Secretary?
Again, what I have said about the death of George Floyd is absolutely tragic, should not have happened. And again, we need to hold those that abuse their power, that abuse the badge that they wear, we need to hold them accountable. But when we talk about reforming law enforcement, so if you want to look at the law enforcement culture, you want to look at their practices, you want to make sure that you give them the training that they need, you need to give them the oversight that they need and the leadership that they need. And that's what the president's doing through the CEO. It ties some federal funding to that. We need to make sure that we give law enforcement the resources to change those practices and that culture instead of talking about defunding law enforcement agencies. It's just the wrong way to go.
Secretary Wolf, thank you very much for being with us this morning.